You're standing in a bustling kitchen showroom in Chicago, 1990. Ron Popeil is on stage, selling his latest gadget, the rotisserie oven. His voice is electric, hypnotic, as he talks up this miracle of the American kitchen. But behind those dazzling sales pitches lies a brilliant mind obsessed with how everyday products trigger our desires and fears. How does a salesman like Popeil make something like a rotisserie oven irresistible? And more importantly, what can his methods teach us about how you and I perceive the world? Stick around, because what you're about to hear changes everything you thought about genius and intuition. You've got dozens of mustards, but only one kind of ketchup. Weird, right? Malcolm Gladwell drills into why ketchup dominates the condiment kingdom, opening up a secret about how people's preferences shape entire industries. In 1980, psychologist Howard Moskowitz revolutionized the food industry when he cracked the secret behind what made a perfect spaghetti sauce. Working with Prego, he discovered that no single sauce could satisfy everyone. By segmenting preferences, he created multiple varieties, classic, chunky, spicy, each tailored to a distinct group of consumers. This experiment turned the industry upside down and forced companies to rethink uniformity. But what happened next reveals an even bigger insight into human tastes. Think of product preference like a radio dial. Some companies aim to broadcast one channel loud and clear, believing everyone wants the same thing. Moskowitz showed that people don't all want the same frequency. They want different stations. This breaks the mold from one size fits all to a spectrum where variation is a competitive edge. It's like the difference between a single note and a chord, more harmonious and satisfying. Here's the kicker. While mustard exploded into dozens of varieties, Dijon, honey, spicy brown, ketchup stayed stubbornly standardized. Why? Because ketchup tastes are less diverse, and the market rewards consistency. Consumers want their ketchup steady and predictable. This reveals how understanding your audience's desire for sameness or difference can determine a product's survival and dominance. Ever freeze right when you need to perform? Gladwell digs into why top performers sometimes choke under pressure while others panic, unraveling the hidden mental gears behind failure and success. Take Steve McQueen, the racing legend famed for cool precision under high stakes. During legendary races, he'd enter a flow state, his reflexes sharp but without overthinking every move. But when lesser drivers faced pressure, they'd freeze or overcompensate, losing control. Gladwell uses McQueen's split-second decisions to show what separates choking from panicking, two reactions that look similar but come from radically different brain dynamics. Imagine your brain is a jazz band. Skilled performers riff effortlessly because their minds follow rehearsed rhythms without interruption. This is automaticity. Choking happens when you interrupt this flow by overthinking, like a soloist fumbling the melody by trying too hard. Panicking, on the other hand, is when the band falls apart entirely, losing tempo and harmony, total cognitive collapse under threat. Great coaches don't just build skills, they build mental wiring so responses become reflexive under pressure. By training stress reactions, through simulation and practice, they help minds default to automaticity instead of freezing or panicking. It's like rewiring your brain's stress response, turning pressure into a playground instead of a trap. Ever wonder why some schools hire teachers like football drafts picks? Gladwell exposes Silicon Valley's obsession with hiring the perfect candidate and the trap buried in that approach. Back in the early 2000s, Silicon Valley tech companies fell over themselves trying to hire the same Harvard grad everyone wanted. They were dazzled by pedigree, credentials, and a narrow image of talent. But the biggest problem? Their choices looked impressive on paper but failed spectacularly in practice, leaving teams out of sync and innovation stalled. Gladwell took a magnifying glass to this phenomenon and found a fascinating link to American football draft picks. Football scouts don't just pick the fastest or strongest, They pick players who fit their team's unique style. But there's a catch. This often leads to cloning, hiring people who think, act, and look alike. It's like assembling a choir all singing the same note, technically perfect but lacking harmony. This similarity bias blinds decision makers, killing creativity and resilience. The payoff: companies that diversify hiring, mixing backgrounds, thinking styles, even unproven profiles, outperform the clone armies. It turns out, teams built on difference generate ideas and solve problems with more agility. Gladwell's insight flips the hiring playbook, showing you that the quarterback isn't always the MVP. Sometimes you need a whole, unexpected roster. What can a guy who calms savage dogs teach you about human behavior? Gladwell steps inside Cesar Millan's world to unravel secrets of empathy, control, and unspoken communication. Cesar Millan, known worldwide as the Dog Whisperer, once faced a terrifying pit bull that lunged violently at anyone near. Millan didn't yell or force the dog but approached with an unshakable calm. With a subtle hand gesture and steady presence, he rewired the dog's aggression into trust. Gladwell highlights this moment as a perfect example of influence beyond words, a lesson in how presence overrides panic. Millan's method hinges on balance, a mix of dominance and empathy. Think of it like walking a tightrope. Lean too much on dominance and you breed rebellion. Lean too much on empathy and you invite chaos. His success isn't about brute force but about reading signals, body language, and conveying steady authority, much like an experienced conductor leading an orchestra of instincts. The surprise: these lessons apply far beyond dogs. In human relationships, leadership isn't about loud commands. It's about setting emotional tone, creating safety, and guiding without overpowering. Millan's approach reveals that control rooted in calm empathy beats aggression every time, shaping how we lead and connect. Hair dye might seem trivial, but Gladwell peels back layers to show how it mirrors social change, gender, and identity in the 20th century. Prepare for a dazzling cultural ride. Madam C.J. Walker, one of the first African-American female millionaires, built her fortune creating hair products tailored to black women's needs during segregation. Her success wasn't just about beauty, it was about empowerment and cultural identity. Gladwell tells how hair dye and hair care became coded languages for expressing self-worth and defiance in a world stacked against you. Hair dye doesn't just change color, it signals belonging or rebellion, much like uniforms or badges. Think of a city street where every shade tells a story. From platinum blonde to midnight black, each color is a social billboard. This symbolic use of hair dye helps us decode shifts in status and cultural boundaries over decades. The payoff: hair dye illustrates how personal choices reflect wider historical movements. It's not just vanity, it's a snapshot of evolving social norms, power dynamics, and identity struggles. Gladwell's story makes you realize how small, everyday artifacts tell the grand narratives of our times. Remember Ron Popeil's rotisserie oven pitch? That dazzling sell wasn't just talk, it reflects everything we explored: the power in understanding human quirks, the genius hidden in everyday choices, and how perception shapes our world. Gladwell shows us that brilliance lies not in the headline but in the details, the small dog-saw moments. So next time you face a problem or decision, try this. Pause, look beneath the surface, and ask, what's the hidden story here? You might just find the extraordinary in the ordinary. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.